This is awesome.
What's going on, buddy?
What's up?
So I'm sitting here with Rob Chevez. He is the visionary, the leader, the CEO of the CAZA Group and Grid AI. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. My pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. You're just a wealth of knowledge, in the market center and real estate in general. And what we're going to talk a little bit about is going to be kind of next steps, investment and wealth, agent wealth, and things like that. So I really wanted to sit down and chat with you about what's on your mind and how you kind of see those things going, and then the relationship between building a real estate business and then kind of what's next.
Mm-hmm.
What's next as far as, one of the first things that you talked to me about the first time we met, like, what's your exit strategy? It blew my mind. I didn't really know. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to keep working in my business. But the more you think about that, what is next? What is the exit strategy? Does your business help you build wealth and things like that? So we're gonna dive into that a little bit. But I want to talk to you about where did you start? How did you get into this business?
I got into this business. Well, I think you might know, I started a recruiting business when I was 24, right? Recruiting technical. I don't know whether or not you knew that or not.
I did not.
I think I was 24, 25. My best friend was approached at a bar, one night and said, hey, and he was a recruiter for a tech recruiter. He said, this sales manager came up to him and said, if you find us a salesperson, entry level, I'll pay you $3,000. Now that was 1997. 98, right? So $3,000 to like a 24-year-old kid, right? In 1990, you're like, that's a lot of money. So he just happened to mention that to me, and I was like, man, if you do that and you decide that you're going to start that business, and you can show me that you're going to make some money in that business, like I'll come join you and help you scale that business, right? So he made a couple placements. And I forced myself upon him. I'm like, let's do this. Let's go, right? And we rode the whole .com boom, right? And we made a lot of money at a pretty early age. Yeah. And luckily enough, around that time, I was thinking, like, what am I going to do with this additional dollars? My dad had planted the seed of real estate in my mind a little bit. I picked up the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like so many people have. And that book's not about real estate. It's about thinking and business. And he just kind of refers to real estate as a vehicle in there. And it got me thinking a little bit more about what does this look like 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road? Because one thing that became obvious was, as a recruiter, it's a fee-for-service business. You place somebody, you make $5,000 or $10,000 or 15 or 20, right, depending on the level of the person or more. And every month you start at zero. And so I was like, wouldn't it be nice if I did something one time and got paid for it forever? Mm-hmm. And so my brain went there, like, what could I do where I could do something one time and then get paid for it forever? And real estate looked like one of those options to be able to do that. And so I started buying real estate, and my first house hack was, I think, in 98 or 99. Got to go back and look, but around that time. And that made me fall in love with the business. They paid for 75% of my mortgage. My friends paid for 75% of the mortgage. I paid for 25%. And I was like, how do I do this more purposefully? Mm-hmm. And it took me on a journey. And simultaneously, right, we kept building that recruiting business, and we went through .com boom, the .com bust. I saw that was my first shift, my first recession. We had to literally let go of the majority of all the company. Then we navigated through very difficult times, built the business back up. And all along, thankfully, I kept buying real estate. Partly because it was so easy to get loans back then, right? And if I needed to make some additional dollars, I would just liquidate an asset and make $50,000, $60,000, $100,000, and that kind of plugged any hole that I wasn't making in the recruiting business. So by the time 2005 rolled around, the business was back. We grinded it out, right, for a couple years, pretty hard. It was back. And I turned to my friend. I said, man, I'm in love with real estate. And I'm still a contributing member of the organization, but I'm not going to be for much longer. My brain is somewhere else. My heart's somewhere else. And so we worked out a deal where he bought me out of the 20% that I owned in that company. And I set off with my wife to go do this, real estate investing full time.
Yeah.
No plan, no model, no clue, to be honest with you.
Yep.
And that's how it started.
So So to start your real estate off, it was all invested. You had no interest in the transactional portion of it.
I didn't even know what being an agent was.
Yeah.
My brain was never there, right? I was purely going to buy apartment buildings. I was purely going to do fix and flips. I was purely going to do wholesaling. I was purely going to be a landlord. That was where my brain was the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't until I ran across the book a couple years later, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book.
Yep.
And when I read that book, I realized that it was a business book. Mm-hmm. You could take the word real estate agent out. You could plug in recruiter or any services business. And I was like, I don't know who this Gary Keller and Jay Pappison, guys are. I don't know who they are, but they're really smart because I saw it for what it was. It was literally a model for anybody to build a business. And I got my license purely to do referrals, right? Because I was marketing to absentee landlords and properties that need a lot of work. And I was getting hundreds of calls. And I could only buy one or two of those properties a month. And what was I to do with the other leads? I was like, oh, well, let me just send them to an agent. And the agent said, well, I can't pay you a referral fee unless you're licensed. So I got my license purely for that. And I had happened to just read the book around that time. And I had to hang my license somewhere. And I met with Coldwell Banker, and I met with Long & Foster, and I met with, and I met with Keller. And honestly, at the time, this office was the worst, the worst performing office, I think, in the entire MLS, right? It was bad. But I didn't care because I had the book, right? And I just said, okay, well, this is interesting. How do I apply this book to what I'm doing on the investment piece? And then over time, my brain started shifting. I started learning this really important concept that people don't fully understand when they venture off into real estate investing, is that you need to create your 30, 60, 90-day money from somewhere, right? And you have some options. You can create it as a fix and flipper, wholesaler, could do construction, and or you could be an agent, right? But all of that is active earned income. And the goal is to be on the other side of that. It's to create passive income.
Yep.
And so I remember being at a crossroads, trying to figure out, where do I want to make my active earned income from? Do I want to be Rob, the full-time investor, or do I want to be, and just continue buying investments, or do I want to be the agent that thinks like an investor, right? Yeah. And it was a very conscious decision to lead with the agent side, and here's why. Whenever I wholesaled the property, I felt like I was killing the golden goose, okay? Because it means that you bought a deal. You got a deal at an attractive price. And then I would wholesale it for a fee. And every time I did that, I was like, that was so painful. I should have kept that. But I needed the money.
Right.
Does that make sense? I needed to create 30, 60, 90-day money.
Yep.
And so I was like, what kind of asset could I sell where I wouldn't feel like I was killing the golden goose? And it was like something retail, right? Like I could help a retail seller learn how to sell their property for more money. And I have a lot of experience because I put my own money, where my money where my mouth was,
right,
with my own stuff. And I understood the little nuances to get a higher return. And I understood what needed to be done to a property to get it sold. And so I was like, I think I could add a lot of value to that conversation. And I remember either my first or my second listing was for $1.6 million in Arlington. It was a developer friend of mine that was having a tough time in 2007 unloading an asset.
Yep.
And he just happened to mention, he mentioned, I said, well, why don't you give me a crack at it? I took it from this very successful team that just sells all luxury. I repositioned it, sold it in 30 days, made a hefty commission, and I was like, okay, I think I need to do more of this.
Right.
And that's how it started.
So it's really interesting that a lot of people, most people, they start their real estate journey or their real estate business on the transaction side and look for ways to get into the investment side. You went the other way around. You started on the investment side with the fix and flips and the holds. And what's really interesting is you're like, okay, I need to find money to make my 30, 60, 90 day cash, and I'm giving away these really great deals. Well, shoot, I could keep these, and long term these are going to be worth way more than what I sold these for.
100%.
Right? So now it's okay. Now I need to find a new way to make money where I'm not giving away all of this leverage that I will have in the future. So then you get into transactions, and that's how you start making all of your money. That's really cool and completely backwards what most people think. The other thing is, in a lot of the conversations I have, the most successful agents that I talk to, they have 2 or 3 portions of their business that feed other portions of their business, right? So there's a lot of folks that they just sit on the transaction portion, right? Or there's people they just do the investment portion. I was talking to Angelo at Washington Property Group, and he's got 3 cogs in his wheel, and they all feed each other.
Yeah.
So he does property management, which feeds his transactional with a lot of buyers and listings, and then that feeds his long-term investments, and then fills those with renters, which then feeds his property management. And it's just one big cog in the wheel, or 3 cogs that get his business to move over and over and over. So it's really interesting that kind of path.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Well, what I also realized was that the real estate hat controls so many levers in the conversation, right? It controls title, mortgage, and it can control insurance, property management, construction, right? It's kind of like we are the source that then refers out, right? And I remember thinking, what if one day we then created just a machine that helped people buy and sell in a more effective way. So we would show them what we learned as investors to buy better and to sell better, and then be able to create these different arms in the business and have a property management business and have a construction business and have a title business. And so the gift of being at the center of the transaction, which is what we are as agents, allows for that to be able to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago, and we pointed out to kind of to each other that, the real estate agent tends to pour into about 20 other businesses by way of referral per transaction. Like you said, mortgage and title and construction, but then you get into movers and landscapers and cleaners and all kinds of other businesses. That's why a lot of networking groups, they're real estate agent centric, and then they kind of build out from there. A lot of the big networking groups, that's how they start.
Yep.
So that's how you started. So where are you now? Like where is CAZA now? What are you guys focused on now? Grid AI, get into that a little bit, but kind of where are you guys right now?
Yep. So as we started evolving and growing, I realized that I needed to figure out a way to create more opportunity for the leaders in my world. And we started making a conscious decision to expand. Right? I had a couple people in my world that had been with me for 6-7 years at the time, and they were doing really, really well. And I knew that unless I made my world bigger, that they would probably leave one day. So I kind of preemptively struck on that. I said, why don't we start thinking about a model, and Gary Kettler's been talking about this, why don't we look at what it would look like for you to open up an office, right? And so what we've done now is we've opened up 9 different offices, 9 different business units, and CAZA is really a holding company that incubates real estate businesses, right? So we're known as a real estate team, but really what we are is we're a holding company that owns these 9 different businesses, and we want to own 200 plus of these types of businesses, all up and down Bright, right? Whether they're investment, construction, sales teams. Because once you understand the model, you could just you have to find the right who's to partner with. But once you understand the model, you literally can show somebody a path to go from what I call a highly paid self-employed person to actually becoming a business owner and wealth builder investor, right? Yeah. And so the journey, I call that, is the 7 levels of wealth, right? Yep. I've specifically targeting my agent friends, calling it the 7 levels of agent wealth, to show them the mental journey that they go on if they, like, what does this look like if you want to live a really, really big life, and what are the different steps? So we kind of broke that out for them. And Grid, there's Grid Investor, which is literally it's a community of real estate investors made up of real estate entrepreneurs. It's global now. Yep. There's 20,000 people. Grid AI is just a little sliver inside Grid that it's helping the agent understand how to become an investor wealth builder. Right.
Take that next step in their business.
Yeah, and for the purpose of helping their clients go on that journey, right? You could only really take a client on that journey if you yourself are on that journey. Right. And you should take yourself on that journey and then bring clients alongside you.
Yeah. So, I do have an investor mindset, and I actually had a client call me this week, and he has a couple long-term holds, and with a lot of long-term holds they had issues with a previous tenant, like trashed the place, and he's like, I'm just tired of the headache and this, that, and the other. He bought it for $400. I think he owes $300. He could sell it in Arlington for $1 million, and he's like, I think I'm going to unload this. I was like, do not. I was like, this does not benefit my business in the slightest. I was like, do not sell that. That is a gold mine for you. That is going to continue to fund your life and your retirement. And later on down the road, you could leverage that. You could take money out and invest it in something else. I was like, you will not sell this property. Yeah. And he called me back, and he's like, I know you lost some money by telling me that, but he was like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And I think it's those types of conversations that build relationships with your clients that continue to have, those will be repeat clients that you have forever. And then when he has more properties that he wants to go leverage out and invest in, ideally, I'm the first person that he calls because I'm able to have those types of conversations with people. But being able to impact people's lives in that way is really great.
It's funny because I had that same conversation with this week with that friend of mine, that friend of mine that I started that recruiting business with. Yeah. And we're managing assets for him right now. And he's got this one that's just really, really bad. And I was like, he wanted an evaluation of the price, and I was like, man, you just got to keep this. You just got to weather this little storm, right? And you gotta find the right leverage to make sure that you mentally can, not carry so much weight, right? And I'm like, you're gonna thank me if you just hold this long term. Yeah. And he's like, okay, I'll wait till the next cycle, right? And he's young, so it's not like he doesn't need the money right now. Now, there's situations where if you talk to somebody and during the course of that analysis you figure they may have to liquidate something to shore up their life, then that becomes part of that conversation. Sure. But the only way to know that is by asking good questions and developing a relationship and being a true fiduciary to them, which is what Grid AI actually is. It's like, how do you become a real fiduciary for your client to show them real estate from a 360 lens, right, versus kind of a narrow lens that most agents have. Yep. Because they're taught to help somebody sell a house and buy a house, but they don't understand all the different tools available. Right. And when they do, it's almost like, I've said this before, it's like entering into the matrix a little bit. You can see what has to happen because you've experienced it and know it and can play it out. And it's a powerful thing when you have the ability to affect change that way with somebody.
Totally. So you mentioned it a little bit earlier, 7 levels of agent wealth. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about that and kind of run through what that looks like for agents. Because, like I said, we all start, most agents, probably 95% of agents, they get their license, and then, all right, I got to find my first deal. Okay, then what? A lot of people get stuck in that first level. So I've heard you speak on this a couple times. A lot of agents get stuck in that first one, and they go from deal to deal to deal to deal to deal. But there's so much more to it, and it really just helps change your quality of life and building a business and all that stuff. So what does that look like?
Well, I'll kind of give you the journey, right, that happens. When you get your license, you're essentially now, if you're going to do it full time, you're for the very first time typically a little business owner, but you don't see yourself that way. You kind of see yourself as maybe, you see yourself as a business owner, but you don't act that way, right? You're just like, hey, I just need to get a deal. And then you kind of realize that there's all these internal voices that you have to learn how to push through, right? I call the level 1 is really a mindset and energy game. And you've got to learn how to prime your mind and create the right energy to run and start a business. And that means maybe breaking some old thought patterns. And that might mean surrounding yourself with people that are doing like incredible things and getting rid of negativity in your life and focusing on positive and modeling after what the best in the world are doing. So level 1 is really get your mind right and get it ready to actually build something. And then once you get that, and you're simultaneously looking to get deals, level 2 is about learning how to get deals predictably, how to create predictable revenue in your business. And you learn about the numbers that are associated with creating predictability in your business. And I won't go through those now, right? But once you understand those numbers, man, it's like, okay, how much money do I want to make? Yeah. And the challenge becomes you get really good at that game, and this is where people get stuck. You get really good at that game of being a really awesome self-employed person, and you get stuck there because now what's happened is that if you're not careful, you've increased your lifestyle. You've taken all of those investable dollars that you should probably invest into the business to create more leverage for you, and you've bought the bigger house, you bought the bigger car, you've essentially created a trap for yourself and an identity, right? And if you're not careful, it's a trap, right? Yep. And so what has to happen is you have to understand, you got to learn how to get off that transaction treadmill, right? And start thinking like a business person, which then when you do, level 3 is about, hey, how do you build a predictable business? How do you build a predictable business, right? As opposed to just being a predictable self-employed salesperson, right? So you got to learn the language of business, which is all level 3 is about P&Ls and finances and budgets, and how you have to pay yourself like you would pay any other agent out there, and not take more. And
I can't just take the entire commission.
You can't take the whole thing
that
and
comes through.
How much, right? Take 40% and you put the rest into an operating account, and then that operating account's going to have business expenses associated with it, and you could put some of the money into savings. And at the end, hopefully there's a profit. And once you have 4 months of savings, right, based on your spend, like then you could take the profit and you take distributions. That simple act is level 3. When you actually can play that game, you now really are a business owner, right?
Right.
Then level 4 is when you start really investing in other assets, right? Whether it's businesses or, because once you understand how to run the investment of your business, you can learn how the numbers work for other businesses and for other assets. And you go on that journey. Now, is this all a straight line? Life doesn't happen in a straight line.
No.
Right? We buy shit, right? Sorry. We buy stuff that doesn't that it doesn't make sense in the beginning, right? Because we don't know the numbers. But we fail forward. This is what happens, right? We start businesses, we don't fully understand how the numbers work. That's okay. We fail forward and we figure it out, right? So, but if you were to build a straight line, then level 4 is about investing in businesses and investing in assets, right? And then what happens is you kind of realize that in order to live a bigger life, you need to really learn a completely new skill set, right?
Yeah.
And that new skill set, and maybe you've developed some of it, but you haven't done it on purpose, is leadership, which is level 5. Right? Like how do you start really developing leadership on purpose and leading others on purpose as opposed to being entrepreneurial, right?
Did that portion come easy to you, the leadership portion?
It did not. I mean, if I look back in my life, I was team captain for my wrestling team in high school, team captain in college, right? So I had, I guess, some level of leadership that was there. But no, my leaders, like all leaders, we hit a ceiling, right? We learn one leadership way of doing it. And we have to then break through that ceiling in order to live a bigger life. So I would tell you that my leadership lid right now is, well, let's go back a couple years. I was a good enough leader to be able to get our business to, let's say, $2 million, right, in gross commission income. Yep. And then I hit this, like, I kept hitting like 2 million. Like I was like, what's wrong, right? And it's me. I was the wrong, right? I was not leading effectively. And what happened was I made some changes, and it got me to 4, right? And then I'm like, okay, we're at 4, right? And I'm like, how do I go from 4 to 10, right? And it's a leadership question as opposed to a lead generation question, right? Lead generation plays into it for sure, but it's more leadership than anything. And so your business is a direct reflection of your leadership. And that is really hard to sometimes look at and fully understand. And so you go on that leadership journey to live a bigger life. Yep. And it's not easy. And by the way, you don't have to. Like I was having this discussion with a friend of mine. You could keep it small and keep it all. And that's a model too. Keep it small, keep it all, take all those additional dollars, buy assets, and the assets don't talk back to you. They work 24/7, 7 days a week, 365.
There's agents in this office that do that and do it at a really, really high level. They're okay making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, doing 40 or 50 transactions. That's it. They want to travel. They want to travel half the year, and that allows them to do that, and they're completely happy doing it.
And by the way, that is awesome. And what I mean by that is, we sometimes get caught up in this comparison trap. I know I have. I'm like, oh, I want that, right? And then you don't know what that actually means, what the sacrifice for getting that is. And so you've got to make some conscious decisions around it, right? And what's cool about this business is that you could design it any way that you want to design it, right? You can make it a lifestyle business if you want, or you could build something different than that, right? But it's up to you, and you might as well do it purposefully, versus just flying blind, right? So walking people through this journey allows them to be able to make decisions and say, oh, I just want to have this smaller micro team, because I want to be able to not make it complex, earn $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, working 10, 15 hours a week, right, and travel. Awesome.
Well, that's like when you sit down and you talk to somebody, like, what are their big whys? Some people, that is going to be it. I want to spend time with my family. I want to be able to support my family. And I want to be able to travel and do some things. Awesome. Go do it. Here are my thoughts on where you get it. You talk to somebody else, and it's, I want to impact as many people as I possibly can. And I'm going to build, a big real estate team with a bunch of cogs in the wheel to help me do that. Right. So it just kind of depends on who you're talking to, what their big whys are, and why they do it, what they do. So we're going to circle back into the 7 layers, or the
7 levels.
7 levels of agent wealth. So level 5, leadership. So how do you go from 5 to 6? Like, what's that jump?
Well, 5 to 6 is more of training. You've got business training. You've got leadership, training. And then you're going to start building different lines of business associated with, that. So whether it's title or mortgage or more teams, if you want to, you can start replicating the success that you've had in your first business.
Right.
And then the 7th level is just impact. And by the way, you can create impact at any one of the levels.
Right.
But 7th level is impact because you're now really doing it on purpose, right? And you could do it at a bigger scale on purpose, right? Yeah. And that is the journey that you take somebody on. And there's each one of them, each level has its challenges. It's kind of like almost like a choose your own adventure book, right? there's 2 or 3 things, components that will get you to safety and help you complete the chapter and unlock the next level. And if you focus on the 2 to 3 things in each one of those levels, you unlock the next level, right? Yeah. And again, you don't need to go all the way up, right? You could decide, hey, I want to have a lifestyle business, right. And that's cool too.
Yeah. So level 6, you talk about, it's leadership and it's growth. What does that look like? And I know you're kind of in that 6 and 7, but I want to. There's some things specific I want to ask you about 7. But so 6, where are you guys with that in your growth? Where do you see your growth? Where are you purposely adding growth? And what does that look like for you guys kind of moving forward?
So 6 is kind of the scale piece, right? Yep. So the scale piece is once you've formed some form of self-leadership and understand that this is a leadership journey, then you could start helping take people with you on that journey, right? So we'll open up an office, find the right pour into them with the right financial model, pour into them with the right leadership training and development, so that they can then create an actual business themselves, so that they can scale out of that business if they want to, right? And run it like a business, and then have the opportunity to open more businesses. So for example, let's look at Matt on our team, right? Matt is on that journey. He's a highly paid, self-employed person. You saw the numbers yesterday. Yep. He's made a ton of money, right? And he's got some choices here. Like, he can continue doing that and taking those dollars and investing them right into assets. But I know that Matt wants to live a bigger life.
Yep.
And at some point, he's going to have to say, instead of taking those investable dollars and putting them into my pocket, right, and buying other assets, I may have to reinvest them in the business and open up another office and put them into that business and find the right leader to run and manage that business so that I can take that person on the journey. So it's literally like I do it, right? And then he sees me do it, and we do it together for a while, and then he does it. Just that whole thing, just like you're training a buyer's agent for the first time, 100%. Or listing agent for the first time. It's like I do, then we do, then you do, right? What's like that with running an office. So where we are is we understand the financial model to stamp out little offices, and we understand what's required from a leadership journey to do that. And now we provide them the playbook to execute on that plan. And then my job is to identify talent that has the ability to execute that plan, right? So what happens is the CEO, right? And I love this. I heard this from Ben Kinney, but I think he might have gotten it from Gary Keller. It's like a CEO creates energy, right? Engages talent and owns results, right? And so you got to create energy, C, engage talent, E, and own the results, O, right? And I remind myself of that all the time.
How big do you want to grow this?
Well, as big as it will allow itself to grow. Because once you set the stage, your people grow it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yep.
And so we wanted to create a frame, like a foundation that allowed anybody to build as big of a world as that they could possibly build within our world, which is what Keller did for us, right? They laid the foundation and said, I remember Gary said, one day there might be somebody in this room that will build a company bigger than Keller Williams Realty.
Yep.
And I'm seeing that happen before my eyes with talented people within the organization. And you're like, mind blown, right? You've got now 3 billionaires that have been created. Think about that, 3 billionaires.
That's insane.
Right? Within the organization, and it's powerful. So that exists. That is a possibility.
Yep.
And once people see that that's a possibility, it's like breaking the 4-minute mile, right? Once you see somebody do it, other people are going to do it.
Yeah.
So you're going to start seeing this move faster, right?
Yep.
And I know that our organization sees it, and so they buy into that, and they're like, okay, great. Could we open up 200 offices, 300, 400, right?
Sure, let's do it.
And that's like, guys, okay, well, there's a foundation. Like, go.
Yeah. So getting into level 7, I did have a question. So being impactful. What does that look like for you? Because I see you, not necessarily transitioning into it, because you do it at a high level kind of anyway, just the kind of in your leadership style. But what does being an impact look like for
me?
you? Mm-hmm.
It's the game that you play. It's like, I think the best impact that I can create is just being a coach.
Yeah.
Right. Being a guide, right? Helping people get what they want, so that ultimately it fills my bucket, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's selfish.
Yeah.
I see somebody, like Daniel on the team, or Lauren or Matt, and I see them succeeding at a high level. That makes me feel good. Right. And so I wake up every day and saying, okay, how can we do that? And now, how can I do that at scale? And how can I do that globally? And how can we make that happen faster? Right.
What I really like about you, and I've known, I met you 3 years ago. You taught a class about teams and finances, things like that, and I broke down my financial model to you, and you said, no, you need to fix that. And I fought back with you a little bit about it, but at the end of the day, I ended up switching my financial model, right, to more like what you were talking about. But we've seen each other on about a day-to-day basis for the past year right now, and what I like, what's really struck me about you is that you pour into other people, whether it benefits you or not financially, right? So it's the collaboration with everybody kind of around you is really great. So it doesn't matter if there's people on your team or they're not on your team. You will sit down and have a conversation with anybody, and you pour into them. And I think myself as a coach, kind of doing the same thing, doesn't necessarily benefit me financially in any way, but like filling my cup, being able to be a leader or an impact or a mentor towards others goes a really long way. So it's been really cool to kind of watch you do that through the
Thanks,
office.
Man. I think I was wired a little bit that way, right? But also then validated when I read the book The Go-Giver, right? Great book. Or The Power of Nice, or just the concept that relationships will take you to places the money can't, and building relationships with people. And I always think about this, if you help a family build wealth, if you help a buyer or seller accomplish their goals, if you help a team member accomplish their goals, if you've made an impact in that person's life, and hopefully what you've done is that you've stacked a lot of those, on one side. Right? So you've made all these contributions to the world, one person at a time. And over time, that compound effect happens. And you never know where that compound effect is going to take you or lead you, right?
Yeah.
And so I always say, if you have the ability to think, right, think the very best, because that's going to compound on itself. And if you have the ability to decide whether you're going to pour into somebody or not, whether it benefits you or not, pour into that person, because it's going to compound in some way, shape, or form, right? If you have so do that, right, as much as you can.
And it may not even directly come back to you, right? You pour into somebody, and it compounds in a different way, where they end up pouring into somebody else, and you'll never even meet these people,
You'll never know.
right? But you change somebody's life in one way or another, and they're able to kind of move that forward.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, like, your players over the next 20 years. And this is what happens is you could always connect the dots going back, but it's hard to see how they play out moving forward. Yeah. But they will, like, if you do your job right, like, you are changing them completely, right? The thoughts that you're planting in their mind, like, you are helping them grow.
Yeah.
And, let's just say, you're going to die one day, Ryan. Yeah. You're going to die. Like, we're all going to die.
Yep.
And part of what I would hope you'd want your legacy to be is that you would have 1,000+ players there one day and saying, I get emotional thinking about it, just like, Ryan did this for me when nobody else did. Ryan believed in me when nobody else believed in me. Ryan, like took me in. He gave me the right advice. He gave me the words. Dude, that is what it is all about, right?
Yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Changing lives. And, now talking about me a little bit, so I have been a coach for 22 years. The relationships that I've formed are lifelong lasting. In my wedding, I had 4 players that were ushers in my wedding.
Yeah.
I had a call last week from a former player that I coached, 15 years ago at this point, and he calls me, and he's now getting into coaching. He's like, "You're the reason I got into coaching." He's like, "I have a couple questions and things like that." But it's really cool to kind of see things go full circle. Just this past season, I had 2 players that I had coached 6 years ago, and they asked to be on my coaching staff. So it's really cool to kind of see those things come right back around.
So that game that you're playing is the game that I'm playing in real estate.
Yeah.
It's the same game.
Yep.
Right? And you just got to know, what game are you playing? What game do you want to play? Right? And what happens is, to go kind of back full circle, is that most people enter in without really understanding what game they're playing.
Yep.
Right?
100%.
And so all we do is just kind of show them, hey, this is the game that you're playing. There's a way to win the game. There's a way to lose the game. Right? And wouldn't it be nice to know what the rules are right before you even play the game?
100%.
Wouldn't it be nice not to wake up 15 or 20 years later and being like, I didn't even know the rules, and so now I know the rules, and that, gosh, if I had just known the rules sooner, I could have exited the rat race faster, or I could have impacted more lives sooner, right? Yeah. And so that's all that is, right?
100%.
It's just helping people understand the game.
100%. Yeah, it's really cool just sitting here talking to you, business. We talk a little about our life stuff. The last thing that I kind of want to ask, and there's so many different offices and brokerages and real estate companies out there. What is it about Keller Williams that you've been in for so long, and the reasons that you stay?
It's the talent, right? It is. It's the talent. It's the people, right? It's the culture. It is a culture of learning and growing and giving, and like that resonates with me, right? I feel like I earned my MBA. I'm constantly earning an MBA in real estate, right? And when you think that you hit a certain level, like there's a whole nother level to play of the game, right? And so the goal becomes to enjoy the game, right? Have fun in the game. It's not about like how far up that game you go. It's just like, are you enjoying the game that you're playing, right? And what Keller's been able to do is make such the game so friggin' big, right? And have such talented people within the organization play it at such a high level that it's like, why would you you can connect with these people, and they will pour into you to show you how to unlock the next level of the game, right? And that's what it comes down to. So like, if you're the top dog in your brokerage, well, dude, you're gonna stay small, right? You're gonna have to go outside. You're gonna have to mastermind with other people, that are playing the game bigger than you. But the goal becomes, the day I stop being here is the day that I'm like top dog, right? And I'm nowhere near being the top dog, right? There's so many talented people within this organization,
right.
And so so they help lift me up, and my job is to help lift others up, right? And that's just what we're playing.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna end on something that you said, and it's I think it's kind of become cliche at this point. It's not always about the result; it's about the journey. I've talked. I've told you. I've had some success in football and coaching, things like that, and we completed another undefeated season again this year. And I was sitting at home after that last game, and my wife, she's like, "How do you feel? Like, are you so excited?" I was like, I should probably be more excited than I am. I was like, I'm a little bit in my feelings that I don't get to go to football on Monday. You really miss the journey piece of it, right? Being around the people, impacting lives and helping others, do something that they want to do. So
You know what's interesting about this, just this idea, right, is that, we bring meaning to life, right? Like you bring meaning to like what it is that you do on a daily basis. So you associate meaning with what you're doing. And I think what happens is when you see people bounce around or hop around or they're constantly searching, is because they haven't brought meaning to what they're doing, and they don't understand what they're actually building, right? And, you can create meaning anywhere, right? You can create meaning in a concentration camp in Auschwitz, right? Like, people find meaning in that. And so it's how you think about it. And so when I see people searching all the time, it's like, hey, reflect on this and reflect on what you're doing, begin with the end in mind. Like, how can you find meaning in what you do on a day-to-day basis? Because if you can find that space and connect the dots there, then it makes everything else easier.
Yeah,
right.
Things start to fall in place.
And it falls in place. And so, your coaching has created meaning in your life, and you understand how that meaning helps create meaning in other people's lives, and you've connected those dots, and so it's like you're like a man on fire, right? And you're like, hey, the season ends, and I'm like, I'm no longer creating meaning on Monday morning, and that feels weird to me, right? And so, and you know what? Like, actually, I'm not going to jinx you. I'm not going to jinx you. I'm not going to say anything around that, right? Sometimes losses help us recalibrate meaning, right?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they light that fuel again as well and say, okay, let's play the game better, right? And play the game better. And, everybody loves a good redemption story too.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and then, so it's just about, when you lose or you fail forward, right? It's that whole concept. If you lose, what are you going to do about it, right? It shouldn't be necessarily a loss. It should be a lesson. And then how do you
pain
get better
equals
with it? Progress,
right? We're going through pain right now, which will lead through progress for teams and, finances. And like it's part of life, right? And it's just we were listening to Jim Rohn the other morning in our 8:30 a.m. energy huddle, and he talks about seasons, right? And there's there's springtime, and there's summertime, and there's fall reaping time, and there's winter, and each season has a purpose, and you got to understand what that purpose is, and then you also have to understand how are you going to take advantage of each season so that it plays in your favor, as opposed to, sitting back and enjoying summertime too much and letting the bugs eat all your plants, Winter has a purpose. And if you could look at what the purpose is of winter, then it sets you up for a really good spring.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. What are you doing, in your business or in the real estate business? This tends to be the slower time, but there is opportunity here. And what are you doing to kind of capture that opportunity and then build into your next season or next year? And what is that looking like for you? Well, dude, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down. There's just a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate everything that you do around the office and the conversations that we have. You really are one of the best leaders that I've ever been around. I've been around a lot, not in real estate and in coaching and things like that, but just the way that you lead and you pour into others, it's really cool to see. So I appreciate everything you do around.
Thanks,
here.
Ron. We appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. Have a good day, dude.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
This is awesome.